Yeah.
Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome back to Stage Door with me, Divina, and
Me, Michael.
I switched it round there. Did you
You
see what I
have.
did,
I
Michael?
love it. Keeping it
Confused
fresh.
you? Keeping it fresh. We're going to be travelling up and down the country, meeting loads of people across the theatrical world.
Yes, we'll be hanging out at stage doors all over the world to meet our favourite stars.
Like a pair of stalkers, trying to find out as much gossip and information about them, their lives, and of course the theatre world as well.
Yes, and today we are at the stage door for Glorious at the Hope Mill Theatre with the incredible director, Kirk Jameson. Welcome to Stage Door! How are you?
I'm really good. How are you guys?
We're
Good,
very
thank
good.
you.
I see that you've got your tea set up there already.
It's actually coffee.
Oh,
It's a bit more
coffee.
intense than tea.
How'd
Yeah.
you take your coffee?
Black,
Oh.
and I'll say no more.
I take mine like my men. Old, white, and tepid.
Okie dokie.
And I know you're being truthful as well. The thing.
Rich. A rich coffee bean.
Oh my
Darling,
goodness.
we are so excited to have you here on the pod because you've had such an interesting and exciting career before you stepped into directing, and there's been a whole, journey to get here. And so I'm really excited to find out how you've arrived where you are. And in order for us to do that, really what I want to do is find out where was little Kirk? What was life like for little Kirk before all of this started?
We're talking about me as a youngster as opposed to the real little Kirk.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we could talk about that, but no, as a youngster, let's keep it family friendly today.
Okay,
And then
fine.
when we log off, we can find out.
Yeah. Where was little Kirk? So I grew up in Southport, which is northwest, not too far from where I am now because I live in Manchester now. And I kind of fell into performing because I knew I liked theatre, and I knew I liked music and the arts and all of that. But when you're young, no one's going to turn around to you and say, "Oh, do you want to be a director?" Even in amateur settings, no one's going to turn around to a kind of 11-year-old and say, "Why don't you come and direct this amateur show?" So because I liked theatre, the natural route in was through performance. And so I kind of got attracted to kind of doing the school shows and amateur performances. And weirdly, it's just a very, very strange coincidence. I found that I could sing and I could dance. And I didn't know that until I kind of started to try it out. And then, so I kind of put two and two together in my mind. And I thought, okay, well, I like theatre and I can sing and people are telling me I'm good on stage. So I must want to be an actor. And so I followed that train of thought for about 15 years. And, all the way through kind of school, college, university, and then working in the industry. And it wasn't until I was about 28 that I went, I'm not actually sure that I am a performer. I'm not actually sure that I am an actor. And so it was then that I started to kind of look into alternative routes, still in the arts, and still in theatre, but not on stage.
So Southport, tell me about Southport. Am I right in thinking that Southport is the one with the bus station that's really odd and the theatre is almost exactly across from the bus station?
You think that might be Stockport?
Oh, see, I always get everywhere confused.
So Southport is on the coast. It's sandwiched between Preston and Liverpool.
Yes.
And it used to have a theatre. When I was growing up, it used to have a theatre called the Floral Hall, but that's since been closed, actually, post-pandemic. But it still has a little art centre that kind of houses, one-nighters and things like that. But the main theatre where the larger shows would go has now gone, sadly. I think it's been turned into flats.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Did you used to perform at the Floral Hall?
Oh, yeah. So I was a member of a church. I was a member of an amateur group. In fact, two amateur groups, and they would hire the Floral Hall, and we would put on performances there. And I was so invested in all of that when I was a kid. Everything that I could get involved in terms of performance, I would do. Choirs, amateur group, shows at school. I would do as much of it as I can, and then it kind of led into things like competitions, which was quite funny. So I'd been involved in singing competitions, and that's when my mum started to get super invested. And she would. Sorry?
What was your winning song that you sing at competition?
Do you know what, Michael? My rep was quite big. I always learned new stuff. And we'd do, it was, I did kind of all sorts. I learned new songs depending on what the kind of situation was. But, so I did a lot of performing in Southport, and I really did kind of attach myself to every single opportunity I could do in terms of that, youth amateur scene. I had a great time. I loved it. And it really did set me up. It really, really did. So you get out what you put in, don't you? And I think because I was so kind of obsessional about it and so invested in it, it ended up manifesting into an actual career. Whereas I think if you dabble, inevitably it fizzles out.
So after performing for so many years, and then how did you actually find directing? You said you were looking at other opportunities. How did you find directing, and what was the transition like from performer to director?
It's a bit of a sad story, really, but it starts off sad anyway. When I was in Phantom of the Opera, I did the 25th anniversary UK tour, and I was in that for 16 months. And at the beginning of that contract, in fact, while we were still in rehearsals, my mum was diagnosed with a terminal illness. It's in the second week of rehearsals. And by 10 months into the 16-month tour, she'd actually died. And it was a huge wake-up call for me. It made me reassess lots and lots of different things about all different facets of my life. And one of the things I became acutely aware of is how short life is and how kind of finite it is. And this, all of a sudden, this idea of repeating the same 2 hours, night after night after night after night, seemed a bit odd, seemed a bit like a waste of time, like I was wasting time and I could be having new experiences. Now, just to say as a kind of sideline, as a director, obviously I'm very grateful that actors want to repeat the same 2 hours night after night after night. Otherwise, it'd just be me in a room telling a chair what to do. But it all of a sudden it wasn't for me, and I thought, you know what? There's the other thing to say as well is I didn't have that desperate need when I was in Phantom. I understudied Raoul, the one of the three lead characters, and I remember hearing other understudies kind of bitching a little bit about, I want my person to go off so I can go on for the role, or, oh, they don't sound very good tonight, they should be off, I should be on, things like that. And I just did not have that need. I was happy where I was. I felt grateful to be in the ensemble. And I didn't have that kind of, my mum used to call it razor blades on the elbows, kind of pushing yourself to the front. I just didn't have that when it came to performing. And that is something else that I clocked as well. I thought, why don't I want it as much as these other people? And so all of these kind of things came together. And I thought, okay, well, when am I happiest? When am I happiest in this process? And the answer was in the rehearsal room. the rehearsal room to me is such a special place where you can experiment, create. It's very communal. It's very collaborative. It's intensely artistic in a way that maintaining a show for 12, 16 months isn't. That becomes very, very much like work. But when you're creating it, the act of creating something artistic is so fulfilling. And so I thought, okay, how can I always be in rehearsals? Well, I can be a creative. And so that's what I started to do. And the very first thing I ever did, I was on tour. It was actually the show before Phantom. I just started to get a taste of it. I was on tour in The Sound of Music. And we had an enforced week off in the tour. And I got together 6 of the cast. And when we were in each venue, we would rehearse in the bars of the theatre before we went on stage to do the show that night. And we rehearsed this musical review. And then on the week off, I hired the Union Theatre and we all put the show on in that space. And that was my first little foray into directing. And then, as I say, in Phantom, it really kicked in and everything and that ended up being my last job as a performer. But it was a great way to go out because that is a show I've always wanted to do. And I think, I mean, everyone will have their own opinion, but I think Phantom is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think it's a great show. So, what is your process for directing? What is the thing that, we all, as an actor, you start with the text, that's your Bible. What's your process as a director coming to a piece? And what advice would you give to any budding directors out there of how to get into directing? Because it's notoriously difficult because there's so, there are 20 or 30 performers in a show and there's one director. So it's notoriously difficult to get into that position in the first place. So,
That's right.
This isn't me trying to do you out of any work. Just asking, if for budding directors out there, more is more,
I mean, it's so true what you say. It's such a weird thing about for directors because, for the most part of our job is to appear in control. To me, that's kind of part of the job description is to lead. And as a kind of byproduct of that, we always have to look impenetrable and completely in control. But you're right. In terms of getting work, actors are more likely to book jobs than directors because, as you say, there are 10, 15, 20, 25 cast members and there's only one person in the directing job. The other thing as well is that actors tend to be in the job longer than the director. Well, they always are, because they do the rehearsals and the show, whereas the director only does the rehearsals. So filling your diary as a director is so difficult because you have to constantly be looking for work. My process, I'd say, look, initially, I mean, being completely candid, when I started directing, I would do anything. I would do anything. And yes, I would pitch titles and work that I was really drawn to, but they weren't always the shows that were greenlit. Sometimes I would be given projects or have projects suggested to me. And in order to gain experience, to develop my style, to develop my voice, and to get a CV, I would take anything. Now it is a little bit different, and I am more kind of project-led. And I like to... It's funny because considering I've had a background in musical theatre, things that really draw me now are text-led. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I would only do plays. I frequently do musicals, but to me, it's about the story and the words. And, something like Gypsy, for example, I mean, I think that Gypsy has one of the best books in theatre, never mind musical theatre. I mean, the book in Gypsy is just watertight. It's outstanding. Same with Chicago. Oh my God, you've done them all, Divina.
I've done them all, darling. She's done them all.
Same with Chicago. I mean, the book, the story, the way it's written, there isn't a plot hole in it. Whereas, haters can hate, but like you take something like Wicked, and I still don't know the Lion and the Tin Man and there's like huge holes in that plot, and it doesn't really make sense. I think the movie's probably going to answer a few of those holes, but so for me, it's about the kind of watertight structure of something, and it really making sense. And then just, is it good storytelling, and is it a worthwhile story to tell? And I guess that's what really attracts me. And then I think outside of that, I am quite visual. I like aesthetic in my personal life and in my career, my professional life. I like how things look. And so if there's an opportunity for me to put my visual stamp on something, and I can see, you take something like the Simon Stevens play that I did with Will Young a couple of years ago, the script is just 7 letters. There's no stage directions. There's no indication of where it's set. It's just words. And obviously the words are outstanding because it's Simon Stevens. But then what really excited me about that was I had free reign to create the world in which it was set. And that, again, my kind of creative juices could go wild, and I could really put my own stamp on it. And I think, so I would say it's story and it's creative opportunity in terms of aesthetics. Those two things are where I start, my jumping off point.
I love that. Well, we're going to come back to these questions in a minute because we want to hear more about what you're doing with Glorious. But we're just going to pause for a second to play a little game.
Okay.
So Divina's going to get a timer of 30 seconds, and you're just going to name as many musical theatre shows as you can. Maybe
God.
We should just do any show. Oh no, that wouldn't be fair to the previous players, would it?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
I'll count.
I'm ready.
Look at this greasy phone. Oh my God. How embarrassing. I should have cleaned
Give it
my
a wipe.
screen before we'd started. Right, we're ready.
Okay.
Go.
Wicked, Chicago, Dear Evan Hansen, Cinderella, Phantom of the Opera, Evita, Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Carousel, Oklahoma, Showboat, Kiss the Spider Woman, Cabaret, Sweet Charity, How to Succeed in Business, Hello Dolly, Maine.
16. That's up there.
That's very
Is that
good.
good?
Yeah, that's good.
What's the record? I'm livid
23.
already.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, fine.
It's 40.
Great. Okay, good. I've got some work to do.
Yeah.
Fine.
I think it's just they're very fast. They just. But the what is it that they say? You should think quickly and speak slowly.
Okay.
So just they spoke very quickly, but didn't.
I'm sure I've
think.
given you that note before, Divina.
I'd imagine. Yeah. If you'd thought a bit harder, you would have said something funny, wouldn't you, Divina? But you didn't.
Well done, though. You did very well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So we found out a little bit about your process, which is good. And now I want to know, you're directing Glorious at Hope Mill, and what can people expect from Glorious? It's not a piece that I know. So what is it that, people should expect from the show?
So it's a play. It's written by Peter Quilter. Peter wrote famously the Tracy Bennett vehicle, End of the Rainbow, which was obviously about Judy Garland's life, and subsequently got turned into the movie Judy, starring Renée Zellweger. And this play is about a real life figure called Florence Foster Jenkins, who was, there you go, the pennies just dropped.
Is this the one?
I love her. I've got her album, The Glory of the Human Voice. Wow. I listened to it on the reg. I love it.
Exactly.
Why am I not in this?
You're on. So Florence was a real life person. She was an American socialite who lived in New York, and she is lovingly dubbed the world's worst singer. and there's a very famous movie that Meryl Streep made of her life as well, which is just called Florence Foster Jenkins, and she obviously had a huge love and respect for the classical repertoire, the operatic repertoire, and it's a real. I think that's something that's worth kind of defining, or being specific about. It wasn't her respect for it wasn't up for negotiation. It was real. She really, really did have a huge respect for this material, and she loved it dearly. And something that was very common then, which is less common now, is people did sing. People gave recitals at home and as part of entertainment and part of kind of social events. And so she had, because she had the spare cash, a repetiteur, a pianist, come into our home, and she would practice songs to give these kind of little presentations to her friends. But what she didn't know was these recitals were very, very, very popular because people came to laugh. But the rule was you couldn't give the game away. You had to pretend you were there taking it seriously. And then when you went for a drink afterwards, you could all roll about laughing, talking about how ridiculous it was. And, obviously that rule meant that she just went on giving these recitals thinking that she was wonderful. And she actually went on to make records and ultimately hired out Carnegie Hall and gave a sold out concert there. And again, it sold out because people, it was an unspoken rule, between everyone in the audience that you cannot laugh. You have to bite your tongue, you have to bite your cheeks, and you cannot laugh. What gave the game away?
Did no one ever give the game away?
Well, yes, they did.
Come and see the show, you'll find out.
Yeah, they did, but I think by the end, she started to twig a little bit, at the end of her life, but people around her protected her. And it's funny, I'm not going to mention any names now because that would probably be quite dangerous given my position, but there are people who we all know who are producing work that is bad, and the people around them are not being honest with them. And
you can just say my name, Kirk. You can just say my name. It's fine.
But we know those people, that be them songwriters or show writers.
Yeah.
And they're churning out this work, and it is in essence very expensive vanity project. And the reality is it's just not very good. And yes, there might be some diehard fans who are loyal to that and don't quite see the true nature of the piece. And that was true in Florence's life as well. There were some people who just loved her so much that they didn't quite clock that she wasn't very good.
Okay. I think it was that they loved her so much because she, as a human, it was, when you read about her, she's just so generous and kind and thoughtful and
and I think as well,
you don't want to hurt someone like that, do you?
That's right. I think she needed to be protected. I think she was actually quite vulnerable, and I think that people did take advantage of her because she was very, very, very rich, and so people didn't want to kind of burst that bubble because when she was singing and when she was performing, that's where she was happy. And so there was kind of reluctance to hurt her. So, for various different reasons, she never really found out how bad she was.
She does have one of the best quotes, though, I think, alongside Dolly Parton saying it takes a lot of money to look this cheap. Her quote is, "They can say I can't sing. They can't say I didn't."
Right.
So, like you say, by the time, I think probably by the time she got to Carnegie, she knew that she wasn't maybe the greatest singer of all time. She wasn't Maria Callas. But actually what she did filled people with joy. And I'd met somebody else who was kind of similar, actually, who was famous in the 80s, Margarita Prakatan. She, not a great singer, but what she said was, people love my singing and it fills them with joy. And I think it was the same with Florence, you know, that it wasn't maybe the most tuneful, but it really did bring immense joy and pleasure to people. And once you can recognize, you know, that actually I have this to give, and it's not what that person has, I have something else to give. There's a joy in that in and of itself.
Yeah, what wasn't up for discussion is that she had fans.
Yes.
That was true. And but what they were fans of is a bit more obscure. So, you know, I think that's therein lies the kind of point of it, really, is that for her, she knew people were turning up and people were attending. But I think maybe towards the end, she did start to question why. And that's quite an interesting thing to dissect as well, you know, in terms of the play. You know, someone who, because you can be the most talented person in the world and you're still incredibly insecure about whether you're good enough. And, you know, I was giving another interview recently and I was talking about the fact that I cannot receive praise. You know, so if I'm at a show of mine and people are in the bar afterwards and they're saying to me, "Oh my God, it's so good, you should be so happy," I just can't let that in. It's just not something I'm able to hear. For me, I am my own worst critic, and I know when something's good, and I know when I think something's good, and I know when I'm not happy with it. And so other people's opinions are nice, but they don't really go in the same way that I think my own sense of my own kind of judgment would, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. So on your judgment scale of all of the incredible things you've directed, where does this sit in your level of...
It's a strongly written play and it's very funny. It's very, very funny. But what I'm excited about, and this is always the case with a lot of things that you work on, is right now it appears to be one thing. It appears to be a kind of farcical observation at this kind of kooky woman's existence. But inevitably when we get into rehearsals, it will reveal itself to be something very different. Yeah. And, you know, you start to be able to kind of study that idea of delusion, the idea of actually being happier in your own delusion. You know, ignorance is bliss, they say, and the idea of the comfort of that. And then this idea of other people not wanting to dismantle that for her and allowing her to live within that delusion. Those themes and those subjects will become something really, really beautiful to unpick. And that's what's always so exciting about rehearsals. So it's definitely rich. It's kind of ripe for discovery.
You could probably use Drag Race as a case study for that delusion as well.
We already have, yeah. So I've been watching it. I've been binging it just as a bit of prep, bit of research. Your season specifically,
particularly, yes. You've recently done quite a few kind of concert performances as well. You've had Joel Harper Jackson, and then you did the big project with Rob Madge as well. And I want to know, is Rob Madge as nice as they seem online, or are they actually an awful diva? Give us the real tea about Rob Madge.
No.
Is that a no, they're not a diva, or no, I'm not giving you the real tea?
Oh my God, Divina, you are very provocative. Look at Michael, just absolutely horrified.
Smile and nod, smile and nod.
No.
Rob is Rob. First and foremost, Rob is an unbelievably talented human, and it was a total joy to work with Rob. Uh, what they did in that specific show, for those of the listeners who aren't aware, Byron Seller is a one-person play in which this person performs several characters. So the kind of central protagonist, but then also all the supporting characters, including Bob Streisand, who is kind of one of the other characters. And what Rob was able to do technically in that production was nothing short of miraculous. I'm still in awe of it. I still kind of think back, I'll be washing the dishes and I'll go, oh my goodness, remember when Rob did that? Wow, that's so amazing. Like it still kind of comes back, because it really was kind of this amazing technical feat. And also the play was an hour and 45 minutes long. And so, just to learn that many lines is just kind of unbelievable. And you've got no one on stage to save you either, because if you go wrong or forget where you are, normally another actor can kind of say, "Oh, are you going to the kitchen now?" And just kind of like prompt you to remember where you are in the play. But Rob didn't have that. Rob is an artist. Rob is an artist, and artists are temperamental, and so yes, Rob is a lovely person, but Rob also has a lot of fire and a lot of passion and a lot of opinions, and quite bloody right, because that's what makes Rob an artist. And I always say to students, I work a lot with students, and I always say, you don't hire Judi Dench and then tell her what to do. You don't hire Meryl Streep and tell her how to act. You hire Meryl Streep because you want Meryl Streep. And we hired Rob Madge because we wanted Rob Madge.
Yeah.
And we wanted everything that comes with Rob, and Rob knows exactly what they're doing. But the thing that I appreciated most about our collaboration was that they were so open to working with me and to my ideas and to being led. And that is such a joy when someone is open to playing and discovering and taking chances and trying things out and throwing it out and so I really appreciated and valued that. But I mean, to answer your question, is Rob as nice as they appear? Yes. Yes, they are. But but that doesn't mean that Rob's a pushover. Rob knows exactly what they want and what they can do, and Rob is very good at standing up for themselves, and quite right. Shouldn't we all be able to stand up for ourselves?
Yeah, and you don't want somebody, especially in a piece like that, you don't want somebody who's just going to wait for you to make all the decisions and stand here and say it like this, and that's not. There's no point in a process like
there's
that,
no
really.
point, but also there's no time. If I can give a structure, but it's really up to the actor to flesh out the rest.
100%.
And I can't be say it like this and move over here on that line and raise your eye on that. Like, there's just no time.
No.
So, that's why really good actors will always will continue to work, because and especially if they develop a bond with a creative team or creative, because what I'm finding at this point is I want to work with people who I know can do it. So I'm always thinking now ahead of any project, okay, who do I know who could just nail that? So and Rob will, because Rob has something very special. And they are unbelievably likable on stage. Unbelievably, the audience love them.
And what's been your favourite piece to direct, if you had to just choose just one?
Oh, that's a really difficult question to answer. And I'm not going to choose one. I'm going to choose two. So there,
You're going to say
deal
5.
with it. Yeah, I'm going to choose 10. So, but what I can say is, most recently, Song from Far Away that I did, the Simon Stevens play that I've already spoken about, that was very special. And the reason it was special was for quite a few kind of reasons. The first of which is it was Simon Stevens, and Simon, for those people who don't know, he's a 3-time Olivier Award winning playwright. He's one of our kind of greatest playwrights in the country, and he adapted Curious of Dog in the Nighttime, amongst other things. He's done a lot of work in Manchester and at the National, and he was attached and in the room and collaborative and open to my ideas. I changed the setting. I changed the tense. So I put it in past tense instead of current. And he was just, yep. Like nothing was a problem. He was open to everything. We opened at home, Divina. I know you're very familiar with that venue, and that was just a joy. Working with Will, also a joy. And then to have it transferred to Hampstead and be picked up by Radio 4, the trajectory of that whole project for me was unbelievably special. And so that would have to be up there. But very, very oddly, one show which I think about all the time was the second thing I ever directed. And it was a show, a very campy musical called Dames at Sea, which was on at the Union Theatre, which is a tiny little studio theatre in London. And it was just magic. And it, at that time, because it was a studio theatre and no one was getting paid properly, but it was a very, very, very well-known space. And it happened during a time when fringe theatre was really, really, really happening in London. It had this huge kind of renaissance, and it was really, really, really kind of central. It was getting reviewed by the Stage and the Evening Standard and the Metro. Like people were loving it. And I did Danes at Sea, and I had Rosie Ash, who, for those of you who don't know, Rosie, she was the original Carlotta in Phantom of the Opera. She was the original Miss Andrews in Mary Poppins. She was the original Felicia Gabriel in Witches of Eastwick, and she was in the cast. I had a beautiful actress called Gemma Sutton, who was also in the cast, who's done just a myriad of things. And then choreographing was Drew McConey, who now obviously is Drew McConey. He's kind of taken off and become. But at the time, we were all kind of starting off. Not Rosie, she was doing us all a favor, but we were all kind of starting off, and it was just the most creative, beautiful. We created somehow in that space. We created magic with 65 pence and a couple of chairs. Like, I don't know how we did it, but we did this show was absolutely beautiful, and it sold out before we opened. And it was just this most unbelievable thing. And I remember thinking really naively, this is how theatre is. It's always amazing. It always goes really well, and it always sells out before you open, and you always get like amazing reviews. And it kind of set me up. It set me up for a failure, really. But it was just the most extraordinary experience, and I still feel very lucky to have had it.
We're going to finish with our little game, and I want you to finish the line. Okay. Now, bearing in mind that it's Sasha Regan, isn't it, who was running the Dames, Chubby?
Yeah, Sasha Regan.
She does lots of GNS. So see if you can finish this one. Okay.
Okay.
Poor wandering one.
I know that it goes da 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 da, but I don't know what words are.
I mean, that's close enough for me.
I love that. I had one for you. I was going to go, close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams.
Heard your thoughts of the world you knew before?
Yay!
Is that right? Is that right? Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. That was the moment where everyone switched off in Phantom. Honestly, no. I mean, Music of the Night is really for the Phantom and the audience, but God, I mean, no one in that cast was like,
Eating
it's not.
biscuits backstage.
Oh God, yeah, it was pot noodle break.
Oh,
That
have a cup of tea.
absolutely, yeah,
That's so funny.
boring.
Well, thank you so much for sharing such amazing stories.
Yeah, such a joy chatting with you, Kirk. Thank you so much. And we'll come and see you for Glorious. All right. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.